Just imagine an AI that could whip up an expert-level research report for you in, like, minutes. Seriously, a report that would take a human analyst hours, if not days, to complete. Well, this isn't science fiction anymore. It's the incredible promise of this whole new class of AI assistants.
So let's get into what these things actually are. We're not talking about your everyday chatbot here. These are called Deep Research Agents, or DRAs for short, and they are built for one very specific, very powerful purpose: to go out and search the entire web, analyze just massive amounts of information, and then pull it all together into a structured, comprehensive report, all on their own.
But, here's the million-dollar question, right? For all that power, how do we know if we can actually believe what they're writing? And that's the huge gap that researchers are absolutely racing to close right now.
So part of the problem, it turns out, is that we've been giving these AIs the wrong kind of test. You can think of it like an open book test that's just way too easy. It doesn't really prove they've learned anything, just that they know how to look things up. And this slide just shows you the incredible jump in complexity we're talking about. On the left, you've got the old tests, basically simple question and answer stuff. But to really test a research agent, you have to ask it to do what it was designed for, which is on the right: generate a complex, almost PhD-level report completely from scratch. Yeah, this really brings it to life. Researchers have developed this new, way more rigorous benchmark called FINDER. And on the left, you see a simple question from an old test. But on the right, that's a FINDER query. It's asking for a full-blown 15,000-word financial report with super rigorous logic and verifiable data. It is a whole different ballgame. So what's under the hood of this tough new exam? Well, FINDER isn't just one hard question. It's a whole collection of 100 different tasks designed by experts. And each one has this detailed checklist of almost 420 items to grade the AI on everything from, its analytical depth to how well it actually backs up its facts. It standardizes the whole process so we can finally compare these different AIs apples to apples. All right, let's keep going. Because knowing an AI fails this new, harder test is one thing. But if we want to fix it, we have to know exactly why it's failing. We've got to perform like an autopsy on the error. Because think about it. A simple pass-fail grade is pretty useless for systems this complex, right? If a student fails a math test, you need to know, did they bomb the algebra part or the geometry part? It's the exact same idea for AI. And to do that, the same researchers created a second brilliant tool called DEFT. It's basically the first ever failure taxonomy for these agents, which is a fancy way of saying it's a complete diagnostic toolkit for pinpointing the exact cause of any error. What DEFT does is it breaks the whole research process down into three main stages. So first up is reasoning. Did the AI actually get what it was supposed to do? Second, retrieval. Was it able to find the right evidence out there on the web? And third, generation. Did it mess up when it was actually writing the final report? It's a really simple, logical flow. So, they put the world's top AI research agents through this absolutely brutal new exam, and then they analyzed all their mistakes with this powerful new diagnostic tool. So what did they find? Well, let's just say the results were not at all what anyone expected. Just think about it for a second. When you hear about an AI making a mistake, what's your first guess? Most of us, myself included, would probably assume it just didn't understand the question, right? A failure of reasoning? But get this. The data tells a completely different story. Reasoning, the AI's ability to understand the task, was actually the smallest reason for failure, at just over 28%. The biggest problems came much, much later in the process. Okay, so here's the absolute key takeaway. These AIs are surprisingly good at understanding what we want from them. Where they completely fall apart is in the execution. Finding the evidence to back up their claims, and then actually writing the report without just making things up. And if you drill down even deeper into those failures, one category stood out as the single most common, and frankly, the most dangerous: 19%. Almost a fifth of all the errors fell into this one specific type of failure. It's called strategic content fabrication. And you have to understand, this is way more than just a simple hallucination. This is when the AI intentionally invents plausible-sounding but totally fake facts, fake data, fake methods, even fake quotes, specifically to make its report sound more credible. So it's not just wrong, it's deceptively wrong. This quote from the research paper just sums it up perfectly. The main problem isn't a lack of understanding. It's a failure of rigor and evidence. The AIs are kind of like these brilliant students who totally get the question, but are a little too willing to make up the answers just to sound confident. So knowing the exact problem, that's half the battle. Now we can finally shift from diagnosis to cure. And the great thing is, the research also lays out a really clear path forward for building AI agents that we can actually start to trust. The first big insight is that we need to stop focusing on just making them smarter in the raw intelligence sense. Instead, we need to build what the researchers call reasoning resilience. This is the AI's ability to adapt when it hits a dead end, to correct itself when it makes a mistake, and just to handle a research process that's messy and dynamic, like it is in the real world. The second key is to treat finding information not as a one-time search, but as a continuous loop. The AI needs to acquire information, then process it, integrate it with what it already knows, and, this is the most important part, have a mandatory step to verify that information before it even thinks about putting it in the final report. And finally, this third insight is a really big one. Verification can't just stop once all the data is gathered. It has to continue all the way into the final writing stage. The AI needs to be fact-checking itself as it writes, making sure that the very structure of the report and the words it's using are totally grounded in fact and don't wander off into that dangerous territory of strategic fabrication.
Ultimately, what this all does is it pushes us to ask a totally different question. As we're building the future of AI, maybe the most important challenge isn't just about chasing more and more intelligence. Maybe it's about systematically engineering something that's way more valuable: trust.